Thank you so much for joining us tonight, you guys. We have a really special person here with Thomas Rongen, one of the most humble guys I've ever met. When he's actually a really big deal. He's super chill about the whole thing. He's currently the radio color commentator for Inter Miami and a soccer analyst for CBS Sports HQ. He's coached and played for countless teams. Won the MLS Coach of the Year award, helped DC United to an MLS Cup, coach the U.S. men's U20 and American Samoa teams. An incredible story that's now a movie called Next Goal Wins, premiering this November. So the list of accomplishments goes on. TR, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you for having me. And Samantha, thank you for introducing me to SPJ Sports and Jeff Culp, obviously, to make this happen. And hopefully we can have a fun hour of interaction and brainstorming. But first and foremost, I was born and raised in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, educated in the Netherlands as well. Got a master's in physical education. I always wanted to be a teacher. I fell in love with my game, which is soccer, obviously, in an early age. But in third grade, I had a great interest for sports in general. And it's been a non-stop loving affair since. It's been the amount of hours I've watched other sports. I read about other sports. Look at analysis, obviously, across all platforms and outlets from a very young age. I was very fortunate in 1980 to play for the Dutch Olympic team. In 1978, where we played the US Olympic team in 4 different cities in the United States: San Francisco, San Diego, New York, and DC. And while we are flying over the Rocky Mountains, my coach at that time asked me, "What do you think of this country?" I said, "It's beautiful. I'm going to backpack." Fast forward to 3 months later, that same coach becomes the coach of a team in Los Angeles in the NASL, North American Soccer League, where Pele played, where Warner Brothers Communication owned teams. And he said, "I remember you like the United States. I have a job for you, 1-year contract." And here we are, 45 years later. I'm still in this country. So yes, Amanda, my roots are Dutch, the Netherlands. I rooted for the Netherlands a little bit more against the US in group play at the World Cup, obviously the Women's World Cup. But this country has given me a lot. Yes, I was a professional player for about 12 different teams in the United States, starting with the LA Aztecs, the Washington Diplomats, the Fort Lauderdale Strikers, owned by Joe Robbie at that time, the owner of the Dolphins, and played here the longest of my career. So I ended up coming back to Fort Lauderdale as my base. Yes, I coached in 320 World Cups, head coach of the US men's national team, went to Olympics as a head coach in Beijing, representing the United States. By the way, I'm a dual citizen, so I get an American and a Dutch passport. And I've been the assistant to our World Cup team in 1998, which has given me great experiences as a player and obviously as a coach. And one of the reasons why I eventually, in 2015, after I stopped coaching, became part of beIN Sports when they needed a sideline reporter for an away game in Guatemala. Guatemala versus the US, and beIN at that time owned the rights to the US men's national team qualifying games away. So that was my first introduction. But throughout my career here, I was an announcer at high school games while I was playing. I taught languages at Berlitz. I got my real estate license while I played. I got my coach's license while I played. And I started, since I also was a high school coach, South Plantation High, I became the announcer and coach for the games, basically introducing the teams in the stadium. Then I would do play-by-play a year later. We got a little bit bigger. I did some color as well. Then I did some games for radio for Nova Southeastern, where I was the head coach as well. We were at that time NIA, now Division II school. And I did the same thing there. I was very much in love with being able to, through my passion, give the audience, something maybe a little bit different. So that was through my whole playing career. My coaching career, I stopped doing that. But after I got fired the first time and I had a 3-year contract, they asked me if I wanted to be our color commentator. This was DC United. So I started on a New England Revolution. Actually, Robert Kraft, the owner of the team, asked me kindly if I could become the color commentator. So I did color commentating for 3 different MLS teams. And then I rolled into eventually the ability for me to get to Guatemala and do my first live hit on national television. And I remember vividly, because I don't have an academic journalistic background. I didn't study for that. And there's many that have, obviously. But the first thing the general manager said, who didn't know me really from my playing career, said, I saw a tape. Somebody sent me a tape of you doing color commentating for a local college team, which was Nova Southeastern. And then I did some research, and I can tell that you, former player and coach, probably know the game very well. So I'm going to give you a one-time chance. And since that day, 2015, I'm still employed by beIN, where I mostly call soccer games to the leagues that beIN has rights to. And that's La Liga, the big one, because the owner of beIN Sports, which used to be Al Jazeera, is the Qatari family. The Qatari family owns PSG. So I do every PSG game. It used to be with Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe. And then a year later, I became the first soccer analyst for CBS Sports in 2016. Not that many people know that. And we've built, CBS has built, obviously, since that time. We had no content at that time. And now we've got the Champions League, Europa League, the NWSL, the Women's Professional League. So it gave me an opportunity to grow with the company. I'm calling tomorrow the US women's national team because I studied the international game. I studied the women's game because I knew that sooner or later you have to be well versed in this new sphere, so to speak, of digital media, et cetera, et cetera. So for me to be able to talk about the men's national team as comfortably as the women's national team means you got to study, you got to work hard. And I think those are important traits, obviously. First and foremost, I work in an industry that I always loved, going back to, being an announcer at high school games when I was 28 years old. So my education really was real life. No former background. I do study other sports, obviously. I look at other color analysts, the NBA in particular, where I find a few very, very good, and I can learn from them. So I think I've done my homework. Not my 4 years at a university, but my university was the streets, the fields, the soccer field, so to speak.
Wow, what a journey, honestly, TR. It always amazes me whenever we talk. It's like you've done all these incredible things, but you're always like, yeah, that happened. I did that. You're so cool about it all.
Thank you.
So you were, when you started calling those high school games at 28, do you think you could have ever imagined that your career would pan out to be the way it is right now?
No, because I, at that time, it was more the love of the game and the institution that asked me to do that, so that was something first and foremost. I never thought I would be on air doing a Champions League game between Real Madrid and Liverpool, in 2022, 23. So I did it because I had a great passion, and I feel comfortable in those settings as well. And being an athlete, which is competing each and every day to win games at the highest level where I played, I had a great level of not only passion, but determination to do whatever I did to try to do it well and as best as you can. And then eventually I cultivated a love for calling games and did a lot more research on the teams that came in, acquired more knowledge, looked at the different soccer phrases that are used in the United States versus where I come from, the Netherlands. You know, we don't use the same vocabulary. I speak 4 languages fluently. Spanish is not one of them, but I can get by. So if I have to interview Messi a week from now, I can, you know, hola, yo soy Tomás, Leonel, cuestión, por favor. I could get by, but you got to be aware of your surroundings, and you know that more than anybody else that speaks fluent Spanish, that in South Florida, for a journalist, even print, I think, but online, live, like you and I, that if you educate yourself in terms of languages as well, because Spanish is very predominant. I think those are little things that can help you and set you apart. Outside of my signature bow ties, literally my first time, which was for the Kraft family when I was the head coach of New England Revolution, where I got fired again. You know, you get fired at times as a head coach. And Robert Kraft asked me to do the color. And my play-by-play guy, or actually I said, what's the dress code to the play-by-play guy a few days before the game? He goes, well, I wear a tie and jacket, blah, blah, blah. But he actually said to me, wear a little bit of a crazy bow tie in the colors of the home team. And I did that. And I did that pretty consistently from 1999 till now. So when people recognize me on the street, it's not, hey, it's the former player or it's the former coach, not even he's a soccer analyst. They go, that's the bow tie guy. He does soccer. Yeah. So, you know, little things like that can clearly help as well to set you apart, besides trying to be fluent in Spanish where you live in the southern part of Florida. Those are little things that I think is important and goes back to, you know, work ethic and things like that that are in our industry, I think are very, very important.
Sam, let me just jump in for a minute. First of all, Thomas, it's funny. So just so people know, you and Samantha are coming to us from South Florida, Miami area, right?
Right.
I'm a Texan these days, but currently back in New England on vacation. So I'm in Robert Kraft's territory, and I guess in a sense, him, you know, firing you as a coach maybe opened a door here as a broadcaster. I just want to, as we always say on these events, let everybody know you can use the raise your hand feature if you have a question, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Sam, take it away.
Absolutely. All right. So TR, what do you wish you would have known early on in your career that maybe would have made things a little easier for you?
Right now, I wish, and you know, I'm proud of it actually, because I feel great at 68. That I don't have a keen understanding of digital media and how it has changed journalism, quite frankly, from, you know, announcing at the stadium in front of 20 parents to sitting in your own home and being able to do, as we do right now, you know, on Zoom or whatever media CBS or beIN uses, and I can be part of a show. COVID obviously changed all those things, and I think sports journalism reflects social change as well. And if we're in the business of reporting and reporting as quickly as possible in the smallest amount of time, because people are on their phones now watching shows, fast forward, they want to see a highlight clip of a goal, but also a highlight clip of an analysis. And, you know, being able to understand why some of the women's national team players didn't kneel before a World Cup game when the national anthem was played. You know, so those are things I'm still trying to, you know, wrap my head around a little bit. You know, work ethic is important, networking is important. You know that, Samantha. Time management, I've learned. is important. We seem to have in this day and age maybe more time. All of a sudden, our shifts are a little bit different. Talk about different. There's no more off seasons in sports. Let's be real honest. So it's 24/7 with a lot of competition out there as well. So again, going back to your initial question, that I would have required in the last 10 years, more essential skill set, how to deal with digital media. And you're great at it. And my responses on Twitter or Instagram, which I still don't understand, is like a fire thing. And it tells me you can add to your story, and I don't know how to do that. So I think people that can, like you, that can put up a video on social content under your name and your affiliation, which you do great, and you get clicks are important as well. That's the stuff that that I wish I would have taught myself a little bit better. Saying that, I'm primarily a color analyst, which means I do in studio, as you know, and I'm not remote somewhere where I need to have, the last time I did something remote was for the Messi one. And they say, do you have an IFB? I go, I don't even know what an IFB is. Then you need to bring phone. So I had to go to the store and buy Apple, which I didn't have either, So thank God I'm doing live games into Miami, in the stadium, which is radio. But if you have an Apple subscription, you could see it locally. You can listen to the local broadcasters, which a lot of viewers in the local markets do as well. So again, it doesn't affect me as much as others. I wish that I could build my following, because it's also about the brand nowadays, and I maybe fit more into the category. And I don't know what the majority of your people that are currently with us, and that would be of interest to me. How many have a journalist academic background, 4-year or even a master's for that matter? And how many, which we see now as well, when I turn on the TV, I see a lot of former players and coaches on TV. So I understand that's I think that's important, but I think enjoying your profession is essential, and then you can overcome those challenges. Whereas these former athletes might have a larger following. I know conversations that take place now, thank God, not with me anymore, but if we have to take one of the two that we like, how many followers does he or she have on Instagram or Twitter? And that's a scary world to me, but it's also, it's also the future that I think people need to be aware of. We all know that around the world, there's more true journalists, not former players, writing, or being part of digital or whatever it might be, that are non-athletes. So I think that's good. And look what The Athletic is doing, because we also have seen what Fox and ESPN have done to talent in our industry. So I think you need to be vigilant and understand the landscape more and better. It's not just your love for your passion, your work ethic, your time management, but it's also being, how do I promote myself to climb the ladder in the hierarchy? Because we all want to be at the top, obviously, and that's a challenge for me. Thank God I want to be relevant through the next World Cup, which will be held in the United States, Canada, and Mexico, which is 2026. If the women get it in 27, I'll throw it another year, but then I'm 70, and then I would love to live 4 months in Amsterdam and 4 months in Fort Lauderdale.
I love it. I love it. Listen, I'm right there with you. I'm still honestly trying to figure out digital media and trying to, promote my brand. So we're all learning together. But I wanted to touch back on you mentioning that, you've been fired before. And I can't imagine it's not an easy thing to go through. So what were or who were some of the people that helped you get through those phases in your life that let you, believe like everything's going to be fine. I'm going to pick myself up and we're going to move forward.
Yeah, there's been two that have become very good friends, and also maybe the two biggest coaches that the US ever produced in Bruce Arena. Coached in 3 World Cups, won titles in MLS with teams. I won a title as well in '99 with DC United. I got a ring, so that was a great year, obviously. And Bob Bradley, because they came just before me and had been fired already once or twice before. So and always landed on their feet because they were good. It's not because you're poor. Sometimes circumstances sometimes dictate your fate. And I remember getting a call on a Tuesday late from Robert Kraft to meet me at 6 a.m. in a Dunkin' Donut in Foxborough. So I hang up the phone, I look at my wife, I go, there's something up here, really. So he comes in and he actually prefaces by saying, I don't know much about the game, but I hear from at that time, we're talking about 1999, I was in Boston, correct. He said, but some of my social media people tell me that we don't play attractive soccer, we've lost some sponsors and had to do with the playing style. Well, I had a 12-6-4 record or something like that. But some people already online had complained about, and the attendance went down a little bit, sponsorship. So he said, I need to make a choice and I need to bring in a big name former player, which he did. That gave him a little bit of a boost. But in the end, not a great coach. So it wasn't about the X's and O's where others were. And I could always fall back on those two guys, so as they could fall back on me in those circumstances as well. And that's great to rely on people that are in your industry, understand at the highest level what's required, but more so to continue to stimulate and being able to, nobody likes to get fired, but walking away with the understanding that you're still a pretty good coach or broadcaster or writer, and that circumstances at a company, use maybe SI and ESPN as great examples. A lot of writers from one day to another. It's been there for many years. The Athletic is picking that up a little bit, since they've been in business 2016. So there's plenty of jobs still out there. I think if you talk about print media, online broadcast, or even photojournalism, that's pretty cool. That's being at live events and taking pictures and things like that. Might not be written words, but so there are still, I think, great opportunities out in our industry. And when you get let go in any walk of life, family is important, but more so people in the industry, that particular ones that have had the same fate as you before you, that can speak to the internal strife of how good am I or how bad am I, because you question yourself, obviously, after events like that. And confidence in our industry is also very important. How you present yourself, how you feel about yourself, and how you look. Once I didn't get a job right thereafter. Normally I got hired within weeks somewhere else, but I plummeted, after 4 months into a dark hole because I was so used, which is different in the journalistic world right now because it's so inconsistent in terms of work time, hours, weekends, sometimes not. I had a routine since I started playing pro at an 18-year-old age to practice 5 days a week, starting at 10 a.m. And when I became a coach, we trained at 10 a.m. and I was the first one there at 8 a.m. So I had a routine that my body was used to physically and emotionally. And man, I after 4 months, I need some serious help to get me through that, because that was a dark hole. So you want to prevent that going forward. That's why good friends are very important.
Sam, let me jump in if I may for a minute because we have a couple of hands raised. But first, before that, just I wanted to mention it's really great having you on TR in one sense because this is our 7th event and we haven't really had a former player coach that's turned broadcaster on. And I think it's so fascinating. I think as you probably learned in the broadcast world, there's like an athlete's mentality that's very necessary to dealing with some of the adversities and figuring your way through it. And bouncing back from those moments that you're describing in that dark spot. I think there's been moments like that for a lot of journalists, including in the last several years. You know, we've seen some tough layoffs at certain big time places like The Athletic and an ESPN. It's awesome to see how you've pushed through those moments. I want to get some of these questions. As a reminder, if you can just turn your video on when we come to you and then say your name and your affiliation, that would be great. And we are going to start with Jalen.
Good evening, Ms. Rongen. My name is Jalen Stubbs, and I'm a recent graduate of George Mason University. So from a sports journalist point of view or perspective, if you will, how do you feel we can better serve younger sports fans through sports media?
Oof. Yeah, that's a, I mean, I call it maybe engagement skills. So engagement skills is the ability to generate and gain followers with your audience, and how to grow those audiences is important. You know, that can involve learning what appeals to them. You know, do a demographic research maybe, and look at lots of demographic breakdowns that I think you can use in that industry. Communicate with them. I think that's important as well, in their language. You know, which is important. I don't know what your audience is, but your audience is younger. Now, then we got to talk younger. You probably don't want to call me to talk rap to an 18-year-old, you know, that also happens to like sports and might tune into your content, for instance. And providing an opportunity for them to identify with you. I think that's important, you know, very, very important. And, you know, there's a lot of fans out there, including in my business, that have favorite journalists, that have favorite bloggers, that have favorite social media, whatever it might be, writers, columnists, commentators. You can study, you know, those people that have been very successful, and how they learn how to engage and retain their audience. And then, you know, outside the engagement, be creative. You know, I don't think your audience wants to hear or read about a event. They want to read and hear about an event that excites them and appeals to them. So you got to create pieces that generate. If you can get me curious, is that the right word? Curious about a subject or about something. So I want to learn more about me. You suck me in. So creativity is, I think, to create original content and things like that. It's, I think, originality. That's my strength. I don't copy anybody else in the industry. People do, you know. Copy ideas and styles of others, but I think you need to create and develop, you know, your own personality, so to speak, and your audience can guide you in that.
Excellent. Let's get one more in. Justin Hill.
Yes, hi. Hi, Thomas. My name is Justin Hill, and I'm a sports broadcasting major at Dean College. And as for you covering soccer, what do you do to prepare yourself on a game day as an analyst? And a second question is, since Lionel Messi is now plays for entire Miami FC. How has that been like towards the end? How will this change the game moving forward for him being in the United States?
Great question. I was very fortunate to call his first two games because I call the games for Inter Miami as their radio color analyst, and I do go to practice. So yes, I've shook his hand. Amazing, to get the best athlete in the game of soccer, maybe the greatest all time. Some people might say it's Pele or still Maradona. Is a dream come true for any broadcaster. As I said again, written or other. So my prep, and that comes down, as I said again, consistent work ethic. I think that's important for yourself as well, because that's a discipline. It also shows to the people that are producing, that do a lot of other things behind the scenes, that you are a team player. So that's important. I'm there early. I talk to the producer. I talk to the representative of Inter Miami to see if there's any sponsors that needed to be added to that. And I have done my research already before game day. It's just, prioritizing based on more so the opponent, because we don't get the opponent's lineup till about 2 hours before the game. So a quick recap of those players is important. I interview players during the week that I use on the radio in those segments as well, and coaches. Networking. I try to see the other teams, play-by-play guys and color analysts for the opposing team, and maybe we can share information a little bit without. And there's a tremendous amount of respect in the business that it doesn't go elsewhere. Again, research skills I think is important. And one of the trickiest things is, and that's been tough for me this year, you prep also for your play-by-play guy. And I've had in the last few years numerous of different play-by-play guys. This year I had 3, for instance, in 12 games. One that I knew well, another one not, one average. So chemistry is so important. So we would already spend half an hour talking to each other, and I had to get a feel for him when I can come in, and if that's a throw-in or an injury only, or through the flow of play, I can also come in with a 4 to 6 to 8 second analysis real quick. So that's important as well. Is you create the best work environment possible, and that's only possible with a strong work ethic, great research, and prep time as well. And I'm not because Samantha is on this call, but when Samantha interviewed me for an hour at the Dutch consulate, I was amazed about what she knew about me. Most people go 1, 2, 3, and that's it. But she referenced the movie. She referenced the America Samoa, which not too many people know about. So that means she prepped really well for this interview. That's why I got 3,000 followers, and she's got hundreds of thousands of followers. But yeah, there are great examples out there of guys that do their homework. There's nothing worse than, in particular, which is happening in this industry, for a former professional player, coach, former college player, coach, to roll into that position due to their name more than anything else, and show up late for production meetings. Early in my career at CBS, I was on the set with NFL guys, with NBA guys, and things like that. And some worked really hard, and some came in and just winged it basically. And because of their reputation, got away with it till a certain extent. So we got to help hold our own to a higher standard as well. You just taught me you're currently graduating, from a 4-year hard degree that you earned, and there's place for both. I think, but I always very keenly aware of that, and always go out of my way, be it the cameraman, whomever it might be, to be respectful and understanding of their situation, and knowing their names and things like that is vitally important.
All right. So TR, you mentioned the movie Next Goal Wins. Just in your own words, for those who don't know about the story, can you tell us about it and what you thought about watching the movie for the first time? Because I remember you telling me, I think, what was it, like the week after I interviewed about it, you were like, "Oh, I'm actually gonna go watch it for the first time," and you said, "Tell us about that."
All right, real quick. In 2011, I got fired by U.S. Soccer, but I also had a contract still running. So the president asked me if I could help a hand in an enclave of the United States, which was American Samoa, who doesn't have a high level of soccer knowledge, education, playing, whatever it might be. And on the call, because I had to make a decision, I went to my wife and went, "Where is it?" She goes, "It's next to Fiji, Polynesia." I go, "All right, I'm in." Next day, I realized they're ranked last in the FIFA, so the world's worst team, that had lost 31-0 in a World Cup qualifying game, which is a World Cup record still. A team that had not won in 2 decades, had not scored a goal in 2 decades, and I had to go there to prep them for World Cup qualifying games in their region, against Cook Island, Tonga, and Papua New Guinea, I think it was. And there were 2 British filmmakers that were there before me, who really their whole documentary they were making was about what inspires these people to go back to practice and play, and they know they're going to lose by 20 or more. So they were more interested on the human side. When I came in, obviously they said, "Can we have total access?" I said, "No problem." And we finally win a game against Tonga, our first game, and moved up like 30 spots in the FIFA rankings. And it became a very well-known documentary that won some prizes at the Sundance in England, the International Film Festival in London, Tribeca Film Festival is the best documentary. And in that audience at Tribeca is The Rock, because The Rock is from American Samoa and he helped promote the movie, which is really cool. And another gentleman that said, one of these days I'm going to turn this into a movie. And there was so many people around that I wasn't sure. A few years later, Taika Waititi, who just won an Oscar for Jojo Rabbit, that made 2 Thor movies for Disney that grossed billions, said to me, "I want to go back to my roots, because I have Polynesian blood in me, and I want to turn the Next Goal Wins into a real movie." And he said, "Michael Fassbender is going to play you." So Michael Fassbender is going to play me. I'm actually doing a bit of a world tour in LA, New York, and it opens officially at the Toronto International Film Festival, which is the 3rd biggest in the world, in September. So I'm going to do a red carpet with those guys. So it's one of those badass moments, Everybody sit around with friends and family and say, if they would make a movie about you, who do you want you to play? And in my case, it's an Oscar, Golden Globe winner, Michael Evan Fassbender, who's 20 years younger than me. So I go, yeah, this is good. So the theater release, you're right, is November 17th worldwide. So with Messi, with this thing coming up, life is good. How's your day going?
And any of us are having as good of days as you are having these days, but seriously, that is things. But I also wanted to go back into Inter Miami. Obviously, with the team before Messi, they weren't exactly doing the greatest, but now with him here, I mean, all of the celebrities that you see at the matches and just all of these, fans coming in to see him. What has that been like?
And you're right, Samantha. I've covered Inter Miami from their first game till now. We had Michelle Kaufman, beat writer of the Miami Herald, the Sun Sentinel, because the stadium is in Fort Lauderdale, although in a few years they are building a stadium in Miami. It's already approved. Sun Sentinel, the local newspaper for Fort Lauderdale, didn't even have a beat writer, with a few podcast guys. So there's 4 or 5 guys once or twice a week at training, you know, trying to ask questions and make this big time. The first training session for Messi, they had 450 applications. In the end, they let 220 journalists in. And you know, Samantha, you did the, you know, when he was announced in the stadium, although it was a terrible night, packed house, and all the celebrities are there, from LeBron to Venus Williams to, you know, Kardashians, and the list goes on, because David Beckham is part owner. So David Beckham and Victoria Beckham, they already have an incredible following of big time people in the music and football industry. So it's the who of who. Inter Miami right now has more Instagram followers than the other 28 MLS teams combined. They've become a world brand. Apple, you got to buy a subscription to Apple, and talk about the future or the now. You know, they're all looking for subscriptions, you know, so there's a lot of outlets out there that can give writers or people like you and me an opportunity, because there's so much competition right now. So I think there's a lot of great opportunities as well. But Apple is going to judge the deal with MLS, 10-year deal, 1.2 billion. They're going to judge it on subscriptions. And I'm telling you, before Messi, it was not very good. And Apple had after 2 years, they could have pulled the plug on this one. If Messi doesn't come, because the subscriptions, Apple, you can get worldwide. So in China, in Argentina, all of a sudden, the Apple subscription went through the roof. His jersey, you know, and I even heard an Adidas executive say, we've never seen anything like it. We cannot keep up with the jersey demand. So, you know, all this extra income, the celebrity, and what it's done for MLS as a whole. You know, Soldier Field, where the Chicago team is playing right now, where Inter Miami plays at Chicago, they draw normally 8,000 to 12,000 people. Soldier Field is sold out for the Messi away game, for their home game. LAFC is thinking about going to the Rose Bowl because they know they're going to get 80,000 people. So, and a lot of great players in the world are going. If the best player in the world can go to MLS, why not? So talent will follow as well. So it's got so many pluses, and you know, the murals, you know, that we see now on the streets, the Messi burgers, you know, Messi drinks. It's crazy right now. It's fun crazy, by the way.
It really, really is. Obviously, this has been an incredible experience for you, but I want to ask you, do you have any bucket list items that you want to check off as a broadcaster?
Oh, God. I would love to do a Kentucky Derby. That would be really cool. You know, most Europeans love the races and the horses, the English in particular, but the Dutch as well. So that would be really cool.
Bow tie would fit well with that, TR.
I know. I want to be in a commercial, but a good commercial during the Super Bowl. Not a bullshit one, but a real good one, you know? A little bit like off the cuff, crazy guy from downtown Amsterdam just comes into Dallas, Texas Stadium, whatever, with a whip. So yeah, that would be cool. Those are, yeah, I've been very fortunate during my playing and coaching career. I've been in 78 different countries in the world. I've been in every continent, whatever. So that means I've played in, you know, those countries as well, coached in those countries. I lived in 18 cities in North America since I came here in 1979. And that's also important, because if you look at why I was drawn towards journalism, the same way I was drawn towards playing my sport of soccer, football, which I love, obviously, was my passion first and foremost, but I love to travel as well. And I know in broadcasting, when you get certain gigs, there's travel involved. I knew I would meet different people. I love meeting different people, different cultures. That's why I stay with beIN, because they got a very strong Hispanic side that is totally different than, you know, CBS corporate world. So did that answer your what was the question again? Sorry.
Your list items of what you want to check off as a broadcaster. Yes, that definitely.
Okay, cool.
Sure. What sort of advice do you have for somebody trying to break into the broadcasting industry?
That's a good question. Well, first and foremost, I assume they have a great love for the industry. You know, again, you gotta, in most cases now, you gotta be willing to travel. You know, look at both of us. We travel. You can earn, if you work hard, a decent living. There's great work flexibility. Tomorrow I got nothing. Yeah, sorry. Tomorrow, depending on how the women do tonight, because they play at 3 a.m. against Portugal in the World Cup. So if they win, they win the group. If they draw, they come in second probably. But if they lose, they might be out of the World Cup. So I need to be at CBS at 5 a.m. to do a hit, you know? So yeah. work flexibility sometimes, you know, is good or bad. But in my case, I love it, you know, which is great. And meaning just sports fans in general is just such a positive, because sports in this country, you go to my country, we're a little more sarcastic towards, you know, our players and stuff like that. But in this country, most fans adore their heroes or their teams, you know, which is pretty good. If you talk about essential skills, you know, I talked about work ethic. Networking is important. You know, do you know people already in the industry that can help you? You're building your curriculum, your CV, your reels, whatever it might be. You know, that's important. And again, you know, research obviously is important as well. Where are there job openings? And you'll be amazed where you can find stuff even in LinkedIn. But if you specify certain searches, you'd be surprised actually. There might be some really good entry jobs somewhere. So, you know, research that, I think that's important. Talked about engagement skills in general. You know, how do you interview? How do you prep for an interview when eventually you get a chance? Or do they put you really on the set, or tell you got to write a story? And it goes back to, again, you know, being creative, being different, but most of all, be yourself. You know, because that's defines you, your strength, not your weaknesses. That was important for me. I learned that as a player, you know, to stay within myself. And then I became, actually, when I did understand that and stayed away from my weaknesses, I became a better teammate as well. I was better I served my team better. So what's required at a particular time in this multimedia world? You know, how can you set yourself apart?
TR, I wanted to hop in for a moment and sort of ask you about the growth of soccer in America. And obviously it's such a fascinating time with this Messi storyline. And like you're saying, others will hopefully follow, these other superstar players. The crowd totals that you're talking about at these stadiums is encouraging. But as we know, soccer, football is the most popular sport in the world, but not in this country. How do you think about the dynamics of growing the game to further heights in this country? And you know, you being from a nation where it's just has such a history, how do you think about pulling in not natural soccer fans in this nation and in the Miami market and other places?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I first came to this country in 1979, youth soccer was already big. And bigger than some other major sports on the youth level between 6 and 12 to 14. It was the biggest back then already. But, and we were in the North American Soccer League, the NASL, and I said again, with owners like Warner Brothers Communication. You know, there were some heavy hitters in that one that thought that they could bring this international foreign, in some cases back then as a socialistic sport, 0-0, 1-1 to the United States. They were firm believers. That was the Hunt brothers as well. Lamar Hunt has done so much for the game. But we've seen the rise and the fall of the NASL very quickly after they finally got a network deal for a year at ABC in 1980. In 79, we had 12 teams. In that year, 80, they went to 24 teams. So in 1 year, they added 12 teams. And all these teams owners came in thinking, hey, it's going to be on TV. We're going to make a lot of money going forward. Well, they pulled the plug halfway through the season because nobody was watching. That's when Warner Brothers pretty much bailed. That was the end of the NASL. The MLS, it started also with 12 teams and twice almost collapsed. In 99 and 2001, when we literally had 5 guys owning 12 teams. The Hunts owned 3 teams. The Crafts owned 3 teams, and Robert Anschutz of AEG, owner of the Lakers and some other stuff, he owned 5 teams, and they kept it going for 2 years till they found other investors. And now we're looking at San Diego or Las Vegas to be the 30th team in MLS since its inception in 1996. And these owners learned from the past mistakes. It's called single entity. So they all share in losses and profits. There is a salary cap, although it seems to be a soft one with Messi and Alba and Busquets and others coming to Inter Miami. Clearly, they're violating the MLS rules in terms of budget, but I don't think anybody's going to complain about Messi playing for Inter Miami. As I said, it's great for MLS. But back then, all these kids that played didn't turn into spectators. Now we're doing a much better job, in particular locally, to reach out to young aspiring players. Every team now has a healthy academy. So you attach the academy, that's your reserve team all the way through under 8s. That's about another 16 to 18 teams. That's another 300, 400, 500 players. That's another 1,000, 2,000 parents. They will buy season tickets, and all of a sudden it becomes, in some of the cities that have tried to bring in some big name players, it seems to be sexy again to start watching football and or soccer for that matter. The next step, can we get some inner city players? Could we get LeBron James to become a center forward, for instance? I think that's the next one. And can we tap into our Latin, Central and South American market, which obviously is just naturally large as well? And I know they don't have great income, so you got to find a way though to still make it affordable for them to come to games. Because even in soccer, we talked about Beckham already dishing out 1,000 tickets to all his buddies and friends that happen to be big names, and Messi bringing his entourage. All of a sudden, in a 19,000 seat stadium, which it is, the working man gets left behind a little bit. So can they figure out, MLS in general and all the owners on the top, which they've done a great job in managing all those expectations and handing it head on. They give cities 3 years to prep. So you will have a franchise in 2026. You got 3 years to build your brand, to get season tickets. Charlotte, which is an expansion team, and second team, had 45,000 season tickets sold before the first game in 3 years because they knew it was coming. Atlanta United has sold out when Messi comes, but they get 40,000. Seattle gets 40,000 plus. There are some weak links, including us, quite frankly. because we never sold out in a 19,000 seat stadium, but now we do with Messi, obviously. So can we tap into this generation that wants to see instant success, and instant results? And that means maybe can we find a mechanism to score more goals? And they've tried everything. I mean, I've been just a funny moment here. All the head coaches were announced for the first year in MLS, 1996. I was one of the first head coaches in its inaugural year for the Tampa Bay Mutiny. And we would come together quite frequently with the owners of those 12 teams. And we had 3 or 4 owners had no idea about soccer. And, they would bring up the Cubs. They had a dwarf one time batting. So they said, why don't we say that goalkeepers can be bigger than 4'5"? So we scored more goals. And then somebody would chime in literally, and thank God for the Crafts, thank God for the Hunt family that knew athletics, sports, and soccer in general, that they squashed that. Then no, we can't do dwarves. Well, what about if we make the goals twice as big? Things like that were really pondered, and we stayed with the traditional game. I'm a traditionalist at my age, obviously, so I'm a romantic, but I'm also conservative when it comes to rule changes and things like that. But maybe some rule changes could help, as it helped the NBA, the NHL, and some other sports. Baseball maybe being the greatest because it's not 4 hours, but the game now finishes. So a lot of competition out there for fan engagement. How do we get them here, and how do we keep them here, and how do we turn them into season ticket holders? So that's the next big step, and Apple and Adidas are going to help with that tremendously.
Yeah, I don't think it would have been a good move to go gimmicky, like you're saying, with some of those goalie changes or rules changes. Right. I think to the casual fan too, if I'll just add, the success of the national team, the men's national team, is a pivotal thing as well. So we'll see how they do.
And the women. That's why the NWSL, the professional league, is so healthy, and it's just expanding every year. Now 2 or 3 teams are coming in, owned by females, run by corporations, have mostly females in it as well, former players, but also from other sports. Venus Williams, I think she's part owner of the LA team that came in this year. So good things are happening across the board. And Messi this year, next year, the Copa America, for people that know, that's the biggest competition in South America, when Argentina plays Brazil and Peru plays Bolivia, is held in the United States. So Messi's not going to play, but it's Argentinian national team, maybe against the United States, because we're in this tournament as well. So it's 25, 26, the men's World Cup. Right now, they haven't announced it, but I wouldn't be surprised if the women's World Cup is here in 27, and then the Olympics in 28, where soccer becomes big business for the big countries that for many years didn't care about Olympic soccer was good enough. But now the biggest stars want to represent their countries as well, because in soccer, it's under 23, but you can have 3 overage players. So if MLS, by the end of this decade, or by the end of 27, 28, isn't one of the top 5 leagues in the world, I'll be surprised.
Wow. Yeah. Well, listen, TR, we want to thank you again for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to us, because, again, like I said, it's always a good time with you. You're always such a fun personality to be around. But for everybody that, wants to maybe stay in touch with you, how can they follow you? What are your handles, Twitter, Instagram, where they can?
I don't even know, seriously, what my Twitter, Instagram is. But I can give you my email address, which is my first and last name with the number 6. That was my jersey number when I played, at Gmail.
At gmail.com. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you again for everything, TR. And I just want to remind everybody on the call that we will again have another one of these events in August, and we will keep you updated with who that is next. But thank you again for.
I would love to not be a speaker, but also listen in, because I can learn still something.
Yes, absolutely. We'd love to have you on.
We'd love to have you back. Thank you, TR. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Samantha. Bye.